Welcome back to the deep dive. You are here because you want the shortcut, the clearest, most thorough analysis of the sources you've gathered, but, delivered without all the overwhelm.
And our mission today is really to slice through that complexity and give you the kind of insight you can actually use.
Today, we are diving deep into a phenomenon that I think touches nearly everyone, but it remains stubbornly undefined. Modern exhaustion.
Right. And the material you've shared, it presents this profound paradox. We are not talking about simple fatigue, from pulling an all-nighter or doing hard physical labor.
Exactly. When I first looked through these sources, that core observation just hit me immediately. This strange, pervasive tiredness that kind of blankets modern life, yet it's entirely resistant to rest. I mean, you can sleep for 8 hours, you can take a beautiful vacation, and you still feel completely, totally drained.
It's not fixed by taking a break.
No.
It's the difference between, say, exhaustion from effort and what the sources call exhaustion from existence.
That's the phrase.
And our goal in this deep dive is to really rigorously examine the social, the digital, and the internal mechanisms that create this chronic mental and emotional drainage.
So we can give you the language for it.
Yes. To provide you with the precise language to name this state, this slow, quiet drain that often feels impossible to escape because it doesn't show up as some big, sudden crisis.
Okay, let's unpack this. If sleep isn't fixing it, what is? What does it actually mean that people are waking up tired, not because their body didn't recover,
right,
but because their mind never really executed a true shutdown sequence? That idea, the perpetual open circuit, I think that's where we have to begin. That phrase, exhaustion from existing, it feels revolutionary because it completely redefines the problem. I mean, historically, tiredness was a direct result of exertion.
It was proportional, yeah. You work hard, you get tired, you rest, you recover. Simple.
But these sources, they define this new fatigue as something far deeper than fatigue from effort or just having a few long days. It's not exhaustion from effort.
That's the crucial distinction. We are talking about the sheer amount of processing power that is required simply to maintain your existence in this hyper-connected, hyper-available world.
So it's not the big tasks, it's the constant hum in the background.
Think of your mind less like a muscle that gets tired and more like a computer server.
A server. Okay, explain that.
Well, this new tiredness is like that server is running at, say, 95% capacity 24/7. It's constantly managing all these little background processes.
And what's so interesting to me is how insidious it is. It doesn't arrive like a dramatic warning light on your dashboard.
Yeah, not at all.
The research describes it as it leaks into you slowly, day by day, quietly. It's this low-grade cumulative stress that just never, ever resolves.
And that's exactly why people are so prone to mislabeling it. They rationalize it away.
Right. You tell yourself, oh, I'm just busy, or it's just a phase.
It'll end once this week is over. We're all culturally conditioned to see busyness as, a sign of productivity and importance. The assumption is, if I am this tired, I must be doing something valuable.
But the sources deliver that really painful reality check, which is the weeks never end. And that's not just about the calendar, is it? It's a statement about the system we're in.
Exactly. The baseline level of complexity and the sheer weight of expectation in modern life, it ensures that the peak never truly recedes back down into a valley. There's no recovery period.
So if you're busy, you're seen as valuable. If you're tired, you're virtuous, you're a hard worker.
But in this specific context, the sources argue that the exhaustion is actually a byproduct of mental clutter and constant availability. It's not necessarily productive, focused effort.
But I have to ask, if the system rewards this busyness, isn't the smart response just to work smarter or, to optimize better? Why do the sources insist the problem is that the mind never shuts down? Isn't that just a matter of setting better digital boundaries?
And that's where the analysis of this digital and mental tether comes in. See, the problem isn't the boundaries, it's the whole infrastructure.
The whole system.
The core finding is that the mind stays open even at night because we carry the entire world of obligation, all the messages, notifications, demands right there in our pockets. But more importantly, we carry the thoughts that don't end.
The difference between the thought, I have to do this tomorrow, and the thought, I have an email about this sitting on my phone right now. I mean, that's a massive difference in terms of cognitive peace.
It is. Historically, the end of the workday meant a physical boundary. The information required to trigger work-related anxiety just wasn't immediately accessible.
You had to be at the office.
Exactly. Now, your phone is this glowing, pocket-sized portal to your entire spectrum of responsibility. Professional, social, personal, financial, everything. The body might move, but the sources note that something inside stays heavy because the mental operating system never gets to execute a full, deep shutdown.
So the anxiety of just potential availability is as draining as the actual work itself.
Precisely.
So if we use that computer analogy, we're never running the deep defragmentation process. We're just putting the system on standby, which of course still draws power.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Our subconscious is just continuously running these background checks.
Yeah.
Is the house on fire? Am I missing an urgent text? Is that deadline still achievable? That's the anxiety of availability that prevents any real mental rest.
And that low-level hum of anxiety is what creates the sensation of the endless run. Your sources describe this pervasive feeling of constant, indefinable pressure.
Always an email, a deadline.
A comparison or a reminder that you are behind. And this is critical because it's not just professional. It's driven by social media, self-improvement demands, the pressure to optimize your personal life.
Everything.
And that's where the source asks that devastating question. Behind who? No one really knows.
Everyone is running, but no one knows where the finish line is.
Yeah.
That just it captures the absurdity of it so perfectly. If there's no finish line, then there's no moment of psychological closure. There's no release.
The goalposts are constantly shifting. They're driven by these systemic expectations of, infinite growth and constant comparison to these curated, perfect lives you see online.
Of course. If you are comparing your messy reality to everyone else's highlight reel, you will always feel like you're behind.
Always. And this continuous internalized chase, even if it's purely mental, is profoundly exhausting. It establishes this baseline anxiety that we've started to mistake for normal motivation.
So, the exhaustion is fundamentally an architectural flaw in modern life. It's a lack of psychological space where nothing is demanded of you and nothing is potentially left undone.
Exactly. And that leads directly to how we cope. Or perhaps more accurately, how we avoid.
And that lack of cessation, that lack of an off switch, forces us into digital engagement, not for pleasure, but as a defense mechanism.
A defense mechanism against the overwhelming emptiness that's caused by that open circuit.
This section, for me, really reveals the dark side of all this connectivity. The sources make a chilling observation. They say phones are kept close, not because we love them, but because silence feels uncomfortable now.
Yeah.
I found that detail to be incredibly telling. Why is silence so dangerous to us?
It speaks to the psychological function of the device as a buffer. If your mind is a perpetually open circuit, when you cease all that input, when you finally create silence, you create, quote, space for thoughts.
And the sources are unequivocal on this point. Most people are trying to avoid their own thoughts.
That's the fear of internal space. If you stop the constant input, all that cumulative anxiety we talked about in section 1 just it rushes right in.
You might have to face the fact that you're deeply tired or confront that low-grade emptiness.
So we reflexively fill every single gap, waiting in line at the store, during commercials, even just sitting quietly for a moment.
You reach for the phone.
You reach for the phone, for that digital fix. And this avoidance, it manifests as the continuous cycle of scrolling, refreshing, and checking again.
And it's done, as the source says, not because there is something new or because you're trying to achieve a specific goal.
But fundamentally because stopping feels worse. The action itself is a coping mechanism. It's a way to fight against that immediate internal discomfort.
So we're sacrificing psychological depth for this constant, low-effort, superficial stimulation. We're trading durable, real rest for just temporary distraction.
And the reward system in our brain is designed to facilitate this. That brief, unpredictable burst of a notification or a new piece of content, it provides a little microdose of dopamine that temporarily suppresses the deeper anxiety.
It's self-medication through distraction.
Absolutely. It keeps the open circuit busy enough so that you can avoid the big, heavy, unresolved thoughts.
And this habit, it just infiltrates our most critical biological process, sleep. The sources highlight the habit of consuming content late into the night. It's not for joy, but specifically to delay tomorrow. It's an act of psychological procrastination.
And when we use this mechanism, we reduce sleep to a pause button, not rest. True rest requires a cessation of your cognitive load, and it requires some emotional resolution.
But if you spent the hour before sleep consuming content that just reminds you of everything you haven't done or everything you could be doing.
You've merely postponed the anxiety. You haven't resolved it.
The source notes that even dreams feel rushed. That's a fascinating insight. What is the psychological implication there?
That phrase is deeply, deeply telling. Dreams, particularly during REM sleep, are the brain's mechanism for processing and filing experiences, and they help with emotional regulation.
Okay.
So if your dreams feel rushed or anxious, it suggests that those background processes, that open circuit, are running so high that they're actually hijacking the system's ability to recover.
You're literally carrying the anxiety of availability and performance into your subconscious processing.
Which completely negates the restorative function of sleep. The mental clutter is never cleared out.
So the lack of physical boundaries is now preventing neurological recovery. That ties directly back into the complete erosion of boundaries between work and life.
The line has truly vanished.
Because work follows you home. It's in your pocket, on your screen.
The professional world recognized long ago that if the tool you use for work is also the tool you use for pleasure, it's basically impossible to disengage. The physical act of leaving the office is meaningless.
Right.
And the universal examples, the sources cite answering messages at night, thinking about tasks in the shower, replaying conversations in your head, those are all indicators of cognitive creep.
It means that every space, the kitchen, the bedroom, even the beach on your vacation, is now a potential workplace.
There is no clear line anymore, and the pressure to maintain that performance, it extends into what used to be sacred personal time.
And this absence of a line, this is what creates that toxic guilt dynamic. If there's no clear boundary between work and not work, then rest feels intrinsically, undeserved.
The source states chillingly that doing nothing feels wrong.
I wonder if that feeling of wrongness is tied to that constant optimization pressure. We're being told we should always be maximizing, always growing, always producing something.
Absolutely. Any moment of stillness is interpreted by our internal metric as a failure to maximize utility. Guilt appears the moment you slow down.
It's an immediate, aggressive form of self-judgment.
And here is the profound irony. This guilt forces people to stay busy, especially when they are exhausted. It is the ultimate psychological trap.
So you are most compelled to perform when you are least capable of doing so.
Exactly. We're scrolling late or we're picking up extra tasks, not because we're fascinated or because it's necessary, but because we're desperately running away from the self-judgment that screams, "You are failing if you are still."
So if we accept that the mind is perpetually open, constantly performing, and actively avoiding silence, then the next logical consequence has to be a degradation of the very interactions that are supposed to sustain us. We start to see what the sources call the superficiality of interaction. Outwardly, people look fine. They're smiling, talking about their plans, but underneath, the sources detect a quiet emptiness.
And that's because the performance of being well consumes all the available cognitive energy. There are just no resources left for genuine connection.
Which is why conversations feel thinner, shorter, faster, and just less real.
Right. When you are mentally overloaded from simply existing, you can manage transactional communication. You can talk about logistics, but you can't do the deep cognitive lifting that's required for empathy, for sustained listening, for vulnerability.
It's like we've reduced social interaction to just sharing the headlines rather than, reading the chapters together.
That's a perfect analogy. And this relates directly to the broken attention span. If we are constantly using that digital tether to avoid our own internal space, we have completely eroded our ability to focus outward.
Everyone is mentally somewhere else, even when they're physically together.
And this is a devastating societal observation. That phenomenon of sitting at a table with friends and still feeling profoundly, deeply alone.
Your sources describe it as a kind of mental ghosting. You're physically present, but your consciousness is just fragmented. It's pulled away by the internal monologue of your to-do list or the reflex to check your screen.
Your attention is literally broken into pieces, and the devastating part is that the source says, no one knows how to reassemble it. We've lost the patience. We've lost the muscle memory for sustained, single-focused presence.
We're neurologically trained to seek the next tiny burst of information.
Which makes deep, slow connection feel frustratingly difficult.
And if our attention is broken, then true recovery is impossible, which is why the sources dedicate so much time to the futility of weekends and vacations.
We treat them like maintenance periods, not genuine rest.
Yeah.
Weekends are explicitly defined as recovery attempts, but we have to clarify what they are recovering from. The recovery is overwhelmingly logistical. It's focused on laundry, errands, preparation for Monday.
The entire weekend is just spent absorbing all the frictional costs of modern life that were pushed off during the week.
So we're not resting, we're just catching up on life administration.
Performing the labor of staying afloat, just so we can start the whole cycle again on Monday.
The idea of waking up on a Saturday and doing absolutely nothing just for the joy of it, it feels reckless. The mountain of necessary tasks is just too high.
And when people try to take a real break, like a vacation, the sources find the outcome is just as frustrating.
They're often not restorative because, as the source says, you carry the same mind to a different place. The chronic mental habits, the open circuit, the broken attention, the guilt, they don't need a passport. They travel with you.
You bring the anxiety to the beach. You bring the fragmented attention to the mountain. You might have changed the landscape, but the internal operating system is still running on high alert.
And critically, the experience is replaced by the performance. The sources observe this profound shift where the goal is no longer the moment itself, but the documentation of the moment.
We're taking photos instead of moments, checking messages instead of breathing.
If you have to spend your time making sure your vacation looks good for your followers or your colleagues, proving that you earned the break and are enjoying it optimally, then you haven't rested.
You've just performed another layer of social labor.
And the result is entirely predictable. People return more tired than before.
Right.
They've expended energy on travel logistics, on constant boundary management, the fight not to check the phone, and on performance curation, all while failing to execute that fundamental mental shutdown that is required for genuine rejuvenation.
It confirms that rest is not a change of scenery. It's a change of mental state.
And if the system prevents that necessary mental state change, then vacations are just expensive forms of administrative overhead.
So we've established this deep diagnosis. Chronic exhaustion, driven by mental overload and the avoidance of our own internal space. And this brings us to the core structural critique.
Yeah.
The performance paradox. Why do we maintain this system that is so clearly making us miserable?
Because modern life rewards the illusion of success over the reality of well-being. I mean, just look at the metrics. Modern life rewards output, not presence.
Speed, not depth.
And most destructively, visibility, not truth. If what matters is the appearance of success, then the internal costs are completely irrelevant as long as the output remains high.
Which creates this absolute, non-negotiable mandate to perform. You're compelled to perform being okay, perform productivity, and perform happiness.
It's an exhausting level of maintenance, constantly curating that facade.
And this ties back to that idea of the aestheticization of exhaustion. The sources claim that even exhaustion becomes aesthetic.
Oh, absolutely. We see this reflected in the cultural celebration of the hustle, the idea that you have to be grinding 24/7. That tired but busy selfie, the glorification of working through lunch, it all becomes a badge of honor.
It's a way of signaling your value. I'm so busy, I must be important. Burnout, then, just becomes hidden behind clean photos and polite replies.
It's a very polite, well-dressed, and, filtered form of internal collapse.
And this performance is rooted in a deep anxiety that emptiness feels like failure now. In a society that is obsessed with maximizing potential, whether it's through biohacking or financial strategy or professional advancement, any moment of true rest or lack of output is seen as a moral failure.
Or a systemic failure. You have to refuse to admit to the draining reality of it all.
This fear of failure is what drives the optimization trap. There is this immense pressure to optimize everything, your time, your sleep, your food, your emotions.
The pursuit of efficiency has completely consumed every facet of life, leading to the bizarre reality that even rest must be efficient.
You're scheduling your yoga session, you're tracking your sleep with an app, you're eating specific foods.
Not because they bring you joy or calm, but because they are intended to maximize tomorrow's output.
Your mind is perpetually evaluating itself with this relentless self-critique. Am I doing enough? Am I behind? Am I wasting time?
And because the finish line is invisible, the internal answer is always, inescapably, yes. That self-critique, that drains more energy than any physical task ever could because it is constant.
And here is where we must plant the seed for our final thought. Why this desperate need to prove our value through optimization?
The sources suggest it's fueled by the feeling of being replaceable. You feel interchangeable at work, online, in systems that are too big to notice individuals.
So the optimization trap is a frantic attempt to prove through relentless efficiency and availability that you are indispensable.
If I'm always on, always optimizing, always answering, then they can't replace me.
But let's look at the effect of this constant performance. How does this exhaustion actually manifest when it finally settles in? The sources say burnout doesn't arrive like a crash,
Right.
but like fog.
Yeah.
It is a whisper, not a scream.
And that's the danger. It's not dramatic, it's a slow fade. The sources offer very specific, non-dramatic symptoms of this fog. It starts with dullness. Everything just feels flat.
Music doesn't hit the same. Food tastes flat.
The capacity for joy or deep sensory experience has been diminished because the overloaded mental server is prioritizing survival, not pleasure.
I think we've all felt that, where something you usually love, a song, a movie, a hobby, it just requires too much energy to appreciate. It's an emotional thinning.
Then there's the bizarre time distortion. Time moves strangely fast and painfully slow at the same time. The weeks blur together, creating the sensation that the year is flying by, but simultaneously, each individual task feels tedious and protracted. It's a classic symptom of high anxiety coupled with severe mental disengagement.
The days blur, but the individual moment just drags on. What are the emotional signs that the listener should be looking for in themselves or maybe in their loved ones?
The signs of the quiet fade are typically these internal corrosions. We're talking about chronic numbness, increased irritation over really minor things, forgetting small routine items, or losing your patience with loved ones very quickly.
It's that sensation of staring at a screen and feeling absolutely nothing.
Feeling busy but fundamentally unfulfilled. These are the small daily erosions that destroy quality of life long before there is any kind of visible professional collapse.
And this all leads to the quiet adaptation. Burnout means you don't break down, you slowly fade.
And the system relies on this adaptation because everyone else looks the same, busy, performed, slightly irritable. It feels normal. This is the long, slow draining, not a collapse.
The risk is that the baseline for what we consider acceptable mental health has just shifted downward.
Modern life assumes we'll adapt, and we comply until we have that jolting realization that we can't remember the last time we felt fully present.
Not just happy or motivated,
But truly grounded, available, and engaged in the moment. That state of true presence is the most valuable and, sadly, the most expendable resource in this open circuit.
it's unnerving to think that this pervasive, quiet exhaustion has become the necessary price of admission for modern life. We began this deep dive seeking to understand that strained paradox of modern tiredness. And by rigorously unpacking the sources, I think we've learned that modern burnout isn't a weakness or some kind of personal failing.
No. It is, as the source concludes, the natural response to an unnatural pace.
And the persistence of this cycle is driven entirely by that performance paradox we talked about.
Stopping feels risky. It exposes the emptiness, it threatens the required performance of productivity, and it slows down the runner in a race that has no finish line.
This is why people continue to wake up tired, distract themselves at night, and repeat.
They genuinely don't see another sustainable way to exist in a system that demands infinite availability and throughput.
The material we examine today gives us the necessary language to recognize and define this pervasive state of emotional thinning and mental overload.
And hopefully helps you spot this quiet, common, and often unnoticed epidemic in your own life.
Let's connect the threads one last time. We established that the underlying psychological engine driving this constant output and optimization is the fear of replaceability.
Right. When you feel interchangeable in your job, in your social system, online, you are driven to push harder and stay available at all costs.
That constant aggressive availability is the defense mechanism. It's the proof that you are necessary and valuable.
And if the system rewards connection and availability, the most potent way to prove you are irreplaceable is to never, ever disconnect.
So here's the provocative final thought we want you to carry forward based on the findings of this deep dive. Given that the modern system rewards connection and availability, what is the unseen, perhaps even spiritual cost of disappearing inside that connection just to prove you are not replaceable?
And what does true, unoptimized presence, the kind of presence that allows for genuine rest and deep connection, what does that actually cost when the world only seems to reward measurable, visible output?
It forces us to confront the core trade-off of the digital age: availability versus vitality.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time, stay curious and, seriously, make sure you truly shut down that mental operating system. We'll talk soon.